bittersweet because I got my degree in speech communication with a public speaking emphasis. So any opportunity I get to speak is practice for me. But at the same time, I wish there was no such thing as a fatherless youth forum. So it's a bittersweet occasion for me. I also want to thank the gentlemen and those that have asked questions up to this point that have allowed them to be vulnerable. It's not always the easiest thing to talk about, some things that are tough that you've gone through in life in front of a group of people that you may not know. So I want to commend each and every person that has spoken on this evening or even asked the question. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into my presentation. First thing I really want to talk about, I want to spend most of the time talking about the implication. Brother Joe laid down some statistics earlier on the impact that not having a father can have in the lives of youth. And I believe it was Jay-Z that said men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. And he shared statistics. Research, empirical data. And from this forum, I want to say this real quick. From this forum, I want to say this. Even though I grew up in a two-parent household, that don't mean that I'm better than you. Everybody got issues. My issues are maybe somewhat different. I may have had different challenges to some of these guys and some of you all, but I still had challenges nevertheless. Kind of talking about the emotion question, I was listening to the gentlemen as they were answering the question. I'm 31 years old, and really I'm just beginning to kind of explore and tap into my emotions. I was always taught to suppress to a certain extent my emotions, and I wish my father would have sat down with me at an earlier age, and I wish we would have had certain conversations. But my father's from a different era of man, so I don't think that they really dealt with those things like that in a way that maybe men from our generation do. In addition to being a graduate student, I work with the Boys and Girls Club here in Cape Girardeau. I work along with these guys that come down and volunteer. And so I see the impact of a father not being in a life. I see the impact that has on our youth every day, on both our boys and our girls. And what I'm going to do at this point in time is I'm going to talk about the implications that growing up without a father could possibly have. Understand this. I'm not an expert on the topic, and I don't profess to be an expert. These are just my opinions, and my opinions are just that. You can take them or leave them. I don't mean to offend anyone by anything I say, but once again, they are my opinions, and I'm willing for them to be challenged. So we can go ahead and move to the second slide. And what I'm going to do is, a lot of my perspectives are shaped by either things that I've seen personally or conversations that I've had. I have a lot of friends, female friends, that are single mothers. In fact, the relationship that I just came out of was with a young lady that was married at one point in time, got divorced. Now she's raising 2 children on her own. So that allowed me to learn a little bit about the effects of not having a father in the household within itself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about how it impacts different segments of our society. First and foremost, I want to talk about how it impacts women. And with that being said, I think that the absence of the father in the household puts the women in a position that they truly shouldn't be in. Not only they shouldn't be in, but they are not equipped for. And I say that, I know Brother Joe hit on scripture, Proverbs 19, I believe it was earlier. I'm not going to get, I'm not a pastor or anything like that, but I'm kind of hit on the spiritual aspect. God does things strategically and methodically. And if he wanted single-parent households, he would have designed it that way from the beginning. So that's what I mean when I say women are not equipped for that position. He designed the family structure to have a father as well as a male. When I say women are not equipped, I want to give you an example. I want to give you an example of a pigeon and an eagle. They're both birds, right? Pigeon and an eagle. So they have that in common. However, there are certain things, certain abilities that an eagle has that a pigeon does not have. It does not take away from the fact that the pigeon is not a bird or the eagle is more of a bird than the pigeon, but by design they are different. And there are certain things that, and I'll talk about this a little later on, certain differences between a male and a woman It's a little challenging for a queen to raise a king, and I'll reiterate on this a little later on. So that's one of the ways. Also, it creates an imbalance in the family structure. Once again, like I said earlier, God designed for a family to be father as well as mother. And it creates a position where women have more responsibility than realistically they should have. And men, we have to take blame for that. Men not being present. The women have to, we say stay in your lane. The women have to stay in their lane, one foot in the mother lane, but also another foot in the mother and the father's lane. So it really puts them in a bad predicament from the jump. I will say this, I know, like I said earlier, I know many single mothers, they do a dynamic job. However, you have to be realistic and understand that there are limitations. Next, I want to talk about how it impacts the men. You know, I don't have any children outside of, I tell people the only children I have are the children I work at the Boys and Girls Club. And if you say, consider those are my children, I have about 75. But I don't have any biological children. And I actually look forward to the day in which I will be a father. And it's hard for me to understand how a man can make the choice to not step up to the plate and to hand over his responsibility to be a father. I think that it not only impacts the youth, but it impacts that man as well, because really that man doesn't get to help to nourish and develop the seed that he sowed, whether it was by accident or whether it was by choice. So I believe that it not only impacts the youth, but it impacts that man as well, or it should impact that man by not being in the life of the children that he's created. Also, you know, being a father realistically should be a cheerful choice and not a chore. Being a father should be a honor instead of an obligation. Being a father should be a privilege. It should be one of those things. And it's just hard for me to understand how a man, and I understand different circumstances arise, but it's kind of hard for me to understand how a man can just willingly hand over his right to not be a father and to not be present in the life of the children that he's created. Next, I want to talk about how the absence of the father may impact the little girls in our society. First and foremost, our young women may not know what attributes to look for in a mate when it comes to dating. If they have not seen their father or a consistent male role model, it may be somewhat of a challenge for them to understand what it is, what it means to be a man, what makes a man, how they should be treated, the level of respect that they should be given. So I definitely believe that that is a challenge. Also, you hear of many cases where some young women try to fill a void that are missing the love of a father. They try to fill a void, and they have these random encounters with men that really prey on them and don't really care about them, but prey on the fact that there is a void, and they take advantage of that void. Also, it's important to understand that women need to know, young girls need to know how they should be treated, but they also need to know how they should treat a man, and how to interact with a man, how to deal with a man in which that man, women got game, y'all got game. And you can get a man to do some things that he may not want to do, but like with me, I can't speak for none of these guys, for me it's all about how you present it. So, you know, if you present it to me to where I don't feel like I'm being pumped into submission, then, you know, and that just comes from having a man around and knowing how to treat men and interact with men. Also, last but not least, I think that in some ways, the expectation for men could be low due to their past experiences with their father or the absence of a father in their life. You know, in some cases, because of that absence, you know, there may be a great distrust and for men or whatever the case may be. Now I want to talk about how this could possibly impact our boys. naturally, boys emulate their fathers. Boys look up to their fathers. And there is a certain rites of passage that a boy should go through in order to transition into manhood. And the father should be that person that really sparks that rites of passage. The father should be that person at which the boy sits at his feet and just gleans and learns from. But if the father is not there, that young man is deprived of that opportunity. I mentioned the example of the bird earlier. Once again, I think that women do a great job dealing with the position that they realistically shouldn't be put into and working with what they have. But once again, you have to acknowledge that there are limitations. I understand that as a king, it's hard for me to teach a princess how to be a queen. And that's just because I am not a queen. I didn't go through the transition of being a queen. So, though they do a good job of raising the young men, I think that there are challenges as well. Also, I think that we talked about, young women knowing how to be treated by men. Well, as a man, I may not, because my father didn't really sit me down and teach me, and I didn't have a father to look up to, I may not know how I should be treated as a man, what my expectations should be. So that is a potential challenge as well. And the last thing on this point is, I heard of an example of, does any males in here have the same name as their father? Any males? All right, so I'm Robert White III, so I'm the third generation. I'm the last and final piece of this triangle. And to have my grandfather's name and my father's name is actually an honor for me. But I've heard of cases to where some men are ashamed to have the name of their father because their father wasn't there, or their father wasn't the person that he should have been. So this may be one of the dilemmas that young males face as well. Last but not least, I want to talk about how society is impacted by the lack of fathers in the household. As Joe mentioned earlier, I can't remember the exact number, but many of the men that are incarcerated, not just the men, but many of the people that are incarcerated actually grew up in households where there was no father. So we see issues where people are walking around in cases, and in some cases they may have emotional and mental baggage related to those experiences, and we all have baggage on some levels. Like I said, I grew up with both parents, but I have some baggage on as well. Also, I think that when it comes to our society is creating a cycle of baby mothers and baby fathers as opposed to families, as opposed to fathers and mothers. And I think that we're starting to see a perpetual cycle, as a couple of the gentlemen mentioned earlier. It's to the point to where, it may be rare if you actually know someone with both parents, and not only that, they have a loving relationship, a healthy relationship. So I believe that in a lot of ways, we're creating a perpetual cycle of, instead of, it's hindering the family institution. A lot of people speak of homosexuality and the impact on the family institution, but I think that fatherless youth and the father not being in the house is just as much of an impact. You go to the next slide. All right, I wanted to kind of address some things with child support, and this is a conversation that stems from my ex-girlfriend. It's kind of funny. She was dealing with her ex-husband, and it was kind of funny with his attitude towards the whole situation. He thought that money, as long as he paid money, as long as he gave her the money, then he was doing his part as a father. And in fact, many times she didn't put him through the system like she probably should have. They had an informal side agreement, you give me the money, not through the system. but many times he felt as though he had the option to not even contribute financially. So that kind of baffles me. Our youth really need holistic support. They really need emotional, spiritual, as well as mental support. Financial support is key, but it is not a way for a person to forego or give up his responsibility to have an impact in the life of children. And once again, in our society, I put a don't throw money at the issue. A lot of times we feel like money can solve just about any issue. But once again, I just want to reiterate the fact the real child support, the support that our children need is that to know that we're going to be there and we're going to help them along in their growth and development process. And really, you can't put any amount of money on that. So as a society, as men, as women, we have to really decide that we're going to take a more active role in the life of our youth and not just throw money at the issue and think that will solve everything. And really, I put all of us, it takes all of us. I understand that I can't replace a father, but at the same time, Joe mentioned earlier and a couple of guys mentioned earlier, the reason we do what we do is somebody impacted our life, or we understood the importance of being a role model. And essentially what I find every day is factors such as age, sex, race, half that stuff don't matter to the kids. They just want to know somebody care about them. So really it just takes all of us doing whatever we can to support the youth in our community and to help them along in their growth and development process. Next. All right, I want to close real quick. And if anybody wants a copy of my PowerPoint presentation and my notes along, I didn't really go into it as much as I could have, but I'm going to leave my contact information. Feel free to contact me. I'm also stay around for a few minutes afterwards if you guys got any questions or want to talk about anything that I said. Getting back to the basics. I got two quick videos, both of them short. So show the first one, and it should be up in Firefox already. Well, while we're getting the technicalities together, let me say this. You know, you may not be a father. You may not be a father at this point in your life, but there is a way that each and every one, as Joe mentioned earlier, there is a way that every one of you guys can impact the life of a child. It doesn't even have to be your child. Ultimately, the children today are our collective future, so it would do us all, it would be in all of our favor to invest in the youth today, because ultimately these people will be our doctors, these people will be our lawyers, these people will be our military servicemen. So if we take a more proactive approach to investing in them, that would be the best method. I work for the Boys and Girls Club here in Cape Girardeau. We're always looking for volunteers. It's simple to volunteer. All you have to do is fill out a volunteer application, and you have to undergo a background check. And the reason we do the background check, needless to say, with all the allegations that have been coming out with the Penn State situation in Syracuse, all of the allegations, you just don't want any and everyone working with the kids because you don't know who's who and what issues they have. So we do a background check before we let anyone work with the youth, just to make sure the people that are working with our kids are safe. And if you want to know any more about volunteering, feel free to see me after the presentation. We good to go?
Do you remember when you were a kid? Which club do you remember most? Special teacher? Your coach? A volunteer?
It just takes one day.
It just takes one caring adult.
It just takes one Boys and Girls Club. Who changed your life? Who's gonna change mine?
Are you the one?
I wanted to show that video to just kind of drive home the point. A lot of times we have complex issues that really have simple solutions. And that's what I meant by getting back to the basics. If we take, it really takes, like the kids said, one person to take an active approach in their life. One person to take 5 minutes out their day to ask them how school's going. What's on your mind? Is there anything I can help you with? You never know what that one act of kindness can do in the life of our young people. So I wanted to show that video. And this last video is called Kids Not Jails. And what I really wanted to show this video for is Colin Powell speaking, and he really kind of drives home the point, and I really don't have to add to it. But I want to ask you the question. You know, I've heard growing up all my life, you spend your money and your time on things that are important and what you value. And I really want to ask everyone in this room to assess what it is that we value. I want to encourage us as citizens of this society to assess what our society values and say that kids are important to us, but do we put our time, money, and effort behind them to show them that they're really important? So I want to close with this last video, and then after that, my contact information is up. If you want to contact me about volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club or to talk about anything that I've discussed on this evening, feel free to do so. Thank you all.
Speeches, I looked around this wonderful room, and I know we'll have a chance to see some of the other rooms in this state-of-the-art Boys and Girls Club, the 2,000 Boys and Girls Club. I thought to myself, I see all that steel, I see all that cinder block work and electrical work and air conditioning work. And it takes about this much stuff to make a jail. It's about what it would take. And that's what we've been doing too much of in recent years. We've been using this kind of material and treasure to build jails, to put our children in eventually.